Friends, welcome back. We hope you had a few minutes to stretch your legs and are ready for the next presentation. Before I start, big shout out to our friends in Nova Scotia at the MFRC. Just a reminder that the next presenter will be presenting in French. If you require interpretation, click on the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen and choose the language of your choice. So folks, please help me welcome Maude Arsenault. She's a Veteran Family Program Coordinator at the Valcartier Family Center. Maude, bienvenue. Welcome. Over to you.
Well, let me introduce myself. I am Maude Arsenault. I'm working at the Valcartier Military Family Resource Center for the past 3 years. I'm going to talk about the compassion fatigue experienced by a veteran family member with an operational stress injury. So what is the compassion fatigue? It's not a diagnosis by itself, it's a state of fatigue and compassion. It is also called compassion fatigue, and this fatigue is happening steadily for people who are witnessing a lot of suffering. A lot of sufferance, a lot of pain. That's why the caregivers are most of the time subject to this compassion fatigue. People suffering from this fatigue are going to develop a hypersensitivity, sensitizations to suffering and to pain. So when you are experiencing this oversensitivity, you are feeling uncomfortable when people are suffering and are experiencing pain. And this is something which is some sort of burden that is impossible to bear. So what are the different kinds of signs in terms of compassion fatigue? First of all, there is a huge fatigue, having trouble to find sleep, sleeping a lot. It's also about a strong emotional signs, suffering from roller coasters. Sometimes it's about apathy, mitigating the emotion. Sometimes it's about anxiety, depression. Sometimes it's about mitigation of this sense of accomplishment, this sense of achievement, especially if you are really involved in helping others. When you are in the workplace, you are less performing. It can also mitigate your capacity of focusing, your focusing capacity, and it can also have an impact on your belief, on the things you're believing in. Sometimes it can even cast doubt, call into question, especially if you're a good professional. Lot of fatigue. You don't feel like socializing. Those are psychological signs, but from a physical standpoint, you can gain weight, you can lose weight, you can have some food disturbing disorders, food disorders, appetite disorders. So all those signs are signs for people suffering from compassion fatigue. Sometimes people are involved in nervous breakdowns, depressions. It depends on the environment. So what are the different factors that can improve the risk of compassion fatigue? For instance, witnessing on a daily basis other people suffering and pains. Indeed, if on a daily basis your partner is suffering and experiencing pain, it may cause a lot of compassion fatigue. Secondly, there is the emotional tie with the people, with the person involved in suffering and pain. It can indeed increase the compassion fatigue. That's the case for the frontliners and the caregivers. Frontliners and caregivers should maintain an emotional distance in terms of compassion fatigue, but it's not easy when we're talking about your partner, your brother, your sister, and so on. So in this case, it increases the risks. More to the point, this is about the trauma speech on a daily basis. If your partner is telling you on and on what he's been going through, sometimes it can be a major risk for suffering from compassion fatigue. Still, sometimes the work overload, the overload of work, can be causing this compassion fatigue. So, handling stress is not easy. It indeed increases the risks of compassion fatigue when you have very high expectations. And indeed, when you have a lot of expectations, high expectations, it increases the risk of being disappointed. Sometimes you feel reluctant to ask for help and for support. And the last risk factor is to have too few acknowledgement from other people. So just a quote from a psychotherapist: the compassion fatigue is more or less the same as burnout for a frontliner or a caregiver. So now the risk factors have been addressed, but we also have some protection factors. And my presentation today is about the protection factors. How can we improve the protection factors? First of all, I'm talking about the life habits, the daily routine, sleep, food, the emotion management, everything about socializing and caregivers, how to handle the stress. So we are going to elaborate on all those points. I will not get into sleep, physical fitness, and food. We'll leave it aside, but indeed I do reassure that it can have a great impact, but we will deal with that later on. So the healthy routine, first of all, is about trying to promote and to foster some pleasant routine. So it's great, first of all, to try to cultivate positive emotions, trying to mitigate what we call in this process. So we need to remove the negative stimuli, trying to remove violent videos, trying to get rid of negative messages on social networks. So if we have friends, if we have negative friends, maybe we should try to find new friends which are offering a positive environment, and try to get rid of negative friends, people, forwarding always negative messages. Trying to find some time for oneself, and to try to have this balance with some very positive emotions, and still getting rid of the negative emotions. Now, what about social support? That's the second protection factor. Any kind of relation which are going to give you great feeling, to have the feeling of being supported, feeling of being listened, any kind of support. Who can give you that kind of feeling? Well, that's anybody. It can be your partner, it can be your children, your neighbors, your friends, caregiver, first responders, anybody able to respond and to provide some great emotions and this feeling of being supported. Social support by itself can be of great help to address failings and to better handle stress. This is something which is easier to address a challenge when you know that if anything is going to happen, you will have people who are going to support you. As a protection factor, it's great to ask for support, to ask for help. It's great to ask support from caregivers. It's not because you yourself, you are a caregiver, that you cannot call for support from another caregivers. I usually give to try to sort of prepare what are your resources before being in need of it. So you just have to list down what are your needs, what are your expectations just before having to be in dire need of it. If I'm tired, it will be too late for me to search for needs. So first of all, when you're doing fine, please write down what are your needs, what are your resources you may need in case of trouble. We have some health centers, even if you're living close to a military center. In Canada, we have 32 healthcare centers. I'm sure that in your region, you have a CRFM. All the CRFM have, a particular departments, according to the local needs, that are able to provide some caregiving. So have a look on the website. Call the helping program in Canada. You have the family hotline. You have many different kind of hotlines. We also have the Atlas Institute, where we have a lot of resources, existing resources. In Quebec, we also have the health hotline, social hotline, a lot of community resources, a lot of health centers. So please do not hesitate to resort to those resources, hotlines, and caregiving centers. So please do not hesitate to use that kind of resources. A third factor, protection factor, is the good management of stress. How to manage stress. Where does it come from? What is stress? How to manage your stress? A stressed situation is have 4 features: lack of control, the unpredictability, the other feature is about the novelty, and last but not least, when your ego is being threatened. So lack of control, and secondly, the unpredictability, the novelty, and when your ego is threatened. Somebody who is telling you that it doesn't have a kind of ego, but sometimes people are suffering from the unpredictability. Myself, I'm not being threatened by novelty or when my ego is threatened, but I'm not very comfortable with the unpredictability. Each kind of individual is unique, and you have on the screen the 4 factors that can provide a boost of stress. Now we can talk about the way we can handle stress. To have a short-term stress process, we have many ways of mitigating stress. First of all, to try to think about something nice, something fun, trying to change the mindset. And please bear in mind that your brain is able to handle the stress. Try to, when you are in a stressed situation, just train your brain to think about something fun. More to the point, try to use the right energy. Try to use the right energy mobilized. When you're feeling stress, it's because you are facing a danger, but the body, your brain, is generating the right energy to try to face this danger, and you have to fight to address this danger. And in this time, you can mobilize this energy to try to address this stressful situation. Sometimes you need to face to a danger and to address the stressful situation. A third tip, when you're laughing, when you're happy, you are generating hormones which are mitigating stress. So you need to use a kindness. The brain is not, doing the difference between kindness and a problem. If I receive some great words, some great comments, this is something which is mitigating stress. So try to be kind. And by the way, we can have some techniques, special techniques. Now that I've been addressing the stressing features, what about the different long-term techniques?
We don't have all the same way for the stressors management, but we need to work our capacity to manage our stress through 3 steps. The first one is take a moment for ourselves every day on a daily basis in order to think about those stressors, to know what is stressing me, what are the situations that bring me stress. And then we need to analyze this situation. What is the sign? What is the characteristic that that is stressing me? Is it the control? It is the improvisation? Is it the newness? It is the ego? What is the reason that causes my stress? And then to have a plan B, to think about things that will allow me to reduce my stress, because the opposite of stress is resilience. So there's this capacity to act, to go to plan B when we are in a stressful situation. It is true, if we have a plan B, it is easier to jump back. And in fact, the more we do that, more we get used to it, and it will be easier and quicker to manage the stress. Unfortunately, there is no formula that works perfectly with all the stressors. It's case by case. There is no solution fits it all, and that's why we need to work on the stress. So after the stress, the fourth protection factor are authentic and viable personal health care. I'm speaking here about taking care of ourselves, to think about ourselves. And in fact, those personal, authentic and viable care is to take time to think about my needs, my limits, in order to bring the positive aspect of the day. Take care of ourselves is not something that is always great to do, and it's not suitable to all. But like taking a bath, do yoga, it's not really distressing for everyone. But it's always distressful it's always helping others, but not, it's easier to help others instead of us. We have to seek what bring us emotions, to bring us personal and positive emotions. To take care of ourselves is not comfortable, but it is required. It is necessity. It is essential. It's not comfortable, but it is essential. So in the upcoming slides, I'm going to check with you what are the various ways and means in order to take care of ourselves. So the first one is to have active recovery. What is active recovery? It is what we see with the fatigue or the tiredness or anything else. So the image that you are seeing here are the various kind of fatigue we feel, and in order to recover, we need something different. For example, if the mother who is taking care of the children has to wash the land, to wash the land, to prep the house, but never had the time to go to the gym because she did already enough physical activity during the day. But watching the news or watching a movie is the active recovery, while someone who is in the office the whole day, sitting in front of a computer, sitting at the end of the day to watch a movie is not an active recovery, but instead maybe laying down and just thinking about nothing is the active recovery. The second element is self-compassion. Self-compassion is to accept ourselves simply and without any judgment, to give ourselves some solicitude, some gratefulness, some compassion to ourselves that we will give to someone who is close to our heart. We do it for us. If we do it for ours, we need to do it for ourselves. So here, the three main compassion work is: the first one is to be nice, to feel soft toward ourselves while in front of our success or our mistakes. Stop hitting ourselves or beating ourselves who are not good enough, who are not. So we need to be grateful and we'll be nice to ourselves. The second mindset is to recognize our shared humanity, to realize that we are not alone to suffer. We are not alone to live what we go through. Everyone is in the same space, on the same page. Sometimes we think that no one can understand us. No, people can understand us, and I'm sure someone and a lot of people are going through the same. And the such is a full conscious. It is full awareness. It is to see our experience in a tempered way. We should not exaggerate what we go through or what we feel, and that's something that is quite important. So maybe when we delve deeper regarding the compassion, so self-compassion is to be critical, to accept that we are suffering, that our speech can be hurting, can hurt us, reformulate our thinking, our judgment. So here, in fact, there's a therapist who is talking about the self-compassion. When we make a mistake, most of the time we judge ourselves and we hit ourselves and we say, no, we shouldn't have done that. But the mistake is here. Yes, we can recognize it. I can recognize it. And so Christian Neff, who is a researcher about self-compassion, was speaking about everyone is living with the sufferings, either due to the mourning, the anger, the guilt, and we need to live with this. But sometimes, whenever we push them out, that's where they will take more space. And that's why she's saying that the sadness or whenever we try to move those emotions out, as much as they will be close. But if we try to accept the fact that today I'm not feeling very well, today I'm angry, today I'm feeling guilty. As soon as we accept this feeling, today maybe I'm more anxious, so the emotion will be reduced and it will pave the way to another emotion that is better, that will be positive. But this will allow us to live with that, to accept this suffering. Will he leave here this self-compassion? Here's the link for self-compassion and some resources and additional information, and you will find them into the platform. You can go there and you can find. You have to keep in mind that self-compassion is something that you can practice. Please do not hesitate to practice it. Excuse me. Excuse me. So here, this image are the true basic attitude that we have and that I discussed a few minutes ago. And allow me a few minutes just to breathe again. My apologies. Now, what is the difference between self-compassion and self-esteem? Self-esteem is a self-judgment toward ourselves. Am I a good person? Am I a good professional? Am I a good parent? Am I a good partner? Am I a good professional? Am I a good friend? That is the judgment we have toward ourselves. And self-esteem can fluctuate over time. If I have a bad day, if I didn't work, if I made a mistake, if I had a bad day at the office, our professional esteem can be lower today. But tomorrow, if I manage a project at work, so my professional self-esteem will be better the day after. But self-compassion is an attitude of indulgence and understanding toward our oneself, one's emotion, one's mistakes, and one's shortcomings. Self-compassion is to allow ourselves to be imperfect. If I had a difficult day, that I'm at home, that I'm irritable, I'm tired, and that the children are demanding, they call me, they ask me for a lot of things, I realize I have been impatient, I have been angry toward the children. I can say, I had a hard day, I was tired and irritable, I didn't do it on purpose, I'm going to apologize. That is a self-compassion speech, because I'm giving myself the right to be not really nasty with my child or mean, but I have a right to have bad days. That's what it means. How could we have a self-compassion? So we hear a list of aspects. It is not a consolidated list, but those are examples. First of all, we have to accept our emotion, all those emotions. We have to accept our limits, accept that we have some limits, to accept my capacity that can be different on a daily basis, different from day to day, to be to watch those signals that my body is sending me, but also the emotion. Emotion are signals sent by the body. We need to listen to them. They are here for a reason. We need to respond to those signals when needs be. It is our way to have compassion toward ourselves, is to recognize our success. We need to recognize that we can be success, but we have to recognize our failures, our pet peeves, our mistakes, but those failures should not take more space than they need to be, and more than space than our success. And we have to have a self-compassion, but also to be accountable, but also things that are under our control. We should not feel responsible for everything. We are not responsible of everything. Excuse me once again. Another way to take care of ourselves is to tame the powerlessness, to tame. So it is an emotion, tame powerlessness, that a lot of people feel here, because the illness or the personality that we troubles we have, it's because taming the powerlessness or the powerlessness creates a lot of anxious. We want to help others, but we do not have, because we could not help. Since someone of our family is suffering, but we cannot remove this suffering. And you are not the only one going through that. It is something that is powerful. A lot of sometimes the best thing to do is to accept that whatever I can do is to sit together, in this powerlessness. We don't know what we are going to do, but we're going to do it together, and we will act together. The last aspect that I would like to speak to you about is pertaining to authentic personal assistance. What do we mean by that? Like the financial accountant, we need to enter and exit. If we're someone who gives a lot, but we never receive something in return, then over time, we do not have the energy, the capacity to give. So we need to get something in return in order to work sustainably, to live sustainably. Some people have this tendency to give, but they don't have this tendency to receive. Number one, it's not that sometimes it's to people give back, but sometimes people give back, but sometimes we don't give back. When we give, we should not expect anything in return. Okay, we should not expect anything in return. The only thing in return you can get is this self-compassion, is to reimburse yourself with self-care. If we are waiting for others to take care of ourselves, no. If you give something, don't expect something in return. We need to love ourselves. We need to give ourselves this love, and don't expect anything in return from anyone else. At the end of the presentation, there were some elements that I wanted to keep in mind. I wanted you to keep in mind, first of all, to keep in mind, excuse me, if you suffer from compassion fatigue, you are not responsible of that. You are not weak, and you are not alone. Discuss with your family, with relatives, with the stakeholders. Be positive. People are here who can help you. Seize this opportunity to get support. And the last element that I would want you to keep in mind is, if you think you suffer from compassion fatigue, it is important to recognize the situation that drain your compassion, situation that are stressful, that tires you, that brings stress, the stressor that creates an overload, the overload task. And if there is a situation that is stressful, get out of this situation. You do not stay too long. Take 5 minutes out. Try to get out before coming back. And have a discussion with someone you trust. I finished my presentation pertaining this. First of all, I would like to go to a question. I want to start with the 3 questions that have been asked to me. Someone who asked, how can we escape this trap of the trap of stress? You know, when we take care of ourselves, that is authentic and viable, should on a sustainable way, on a lasting way, should help you and help your partners. You need to accept your limits, your needs. You should know your needs. And if your partner is always talking about their trauma, as a caregiver, as a partner, you do not have the training, you don't have the emotional distance to protect yourself from that. However, you can get help. Some people say, I have been educated, or I grew up, that to say always yes, to never refuse. Putting a limit doesn't mean say no. Say yes, but we can speak what Gult said, but we can speak about this trauma. You can say, we can speak about this trauma, but give me some time. Tell me when the moment comes, because let's agree on a time where I feel that I am ready, where I feel solid and strong to receive all this information. Take your time. Put a limit. Take time to ask for support. It's not because because you are a caregiver. It's not because your partner is suffering from PTSD that you have to suffer from PTSD too. You need to be, whatever I said during this presentation is to take care of yourself, to ensure that you have the tools to face this trauma. I had also the 2 other questions pertaining to resources that are available or that are relevant to the caregivers for people suffering from PTSD. In fact, everything that is relevant here, you need to be skilled. You need to have the tools. You know, what are the symptoms? What are the early warnings? What are the effects of the PTSD on you and your family? Those tools can be helpful for the families to know all that. And I put here in the some resources that can be useful. Go there in my booth and check all these resources. In Valcartier, we are specialized in a PSO ASIS, that is, it is PSTD. We do not have all the space, but go to our booth. Try to check the tools that we are, and of course we are available if you need any assistance. I responded to the 3 questions that have been asked to me beforehand. Let me know if you have any other questions. Thank you very much.
That was a wonderful presentation. Lots of information. I remember visiting Valcartier when I was posted to the recruit school in Saint-Jean, and speaking with members of Le Royal 22e Régiment and their families. And at that time, I didn't know what compassion fatigue was, but I certainly do now. So again, key takeaways for me: we're not alone. The resources are out there. Be kind to ourselves and get the help that we need. So again, merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
Thank you to Maude for fielding some of the questions that we had submitted earlier. I know there's a couple of other questions in the Q&A, and as we've mentioned before, we will do our best to obtain some answers to your questions. Check out presenter booths in the days kind of following the summit, and we'll do our best to, as I said, address what you're sharing with us. And as a matter of fact, our secondary hope with those questions is going to help inform Atlas in future webinars or conferences that we might do. It might help inform the work that we're doing. So we are absolutely grateful for all of your participation today. I'll kind of bounce it over to you for a minute, Polly, but I know that you and I have disclosed that we've both experienced compassion fatigue, and it's, even though you might be aware of it, it's sometimes easier said than done to kind of mitigate it. So I think what Maude was talking about was self-awareness and self-compassion is kind of a beautiful message. I think, especially as caregivers, we so often put ourselves out and are compassionate towards others, and we don't nurture and care for ourselves in the same way that we do our other family members. And it just, before I want to hear your thoughts, I just remember a quote that I heard quite a few years ago that resonates with me, and it says that it's impossible to wipe someone else's tears without getting your own hands wet.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Larissa. And you and I talk about this topic quite often. And I think, what resonated, well, everything resonated with me that Maude shared with us today, but her reference in sort of using the analogy of the bank account, and if you're constantly withdrawing and you're not putting anything back, you're going to be depleted. And sort of using those analogies that are tangible to people, but in a physical manner, and understanding that for yourselves. And I think one of the lessons that I learned over the years is when I was experiencing compassion fatigue and everyone was take. She mentioned about social supports, and social supports were intricate to me because my husband was not available. Um, and he wasn't available because it's where his head was at or where he was on in his journey. It's not that he didn't want to be, but if I was going to him, he wasn't able to give it to me. And so what I found was I surrounded myself with a support system that I still have today. And I'm lucky that I have that support system. So, just think about those things. I think Maude gave us a lot of food for thought in moving forward. And this is, again, a topic that we could talk about for a long time. So thank you.
Yeah, I know for me, like, it was really enlightening from a veteran's standpoint that, when we're talking about, my PTSD, my issues, my recovery, well, you know, my loved ones, again, are going through their own journey. Um, just the amount of energy that is put into, taking care of, my needs, And it's like, where do I stop and other people start? You know what I mean? And so I can just imagine what it must have been like for both of you to be able to, try to navigate through that, the frustration and maybe even some of the fear as well too. Like, is this really gonna, what's gonna happen, right? So thanks so much for sharing your stories and Maud's presentation. A lot of information, a lot of food for thought. It's kind of like drinking out of a fire hose, right? But I'm really glad that we've got an opportunity to get the resources off the platform, take them home, and be able to look at them and digest them in our own time. So thanks.